Hi, everyone. Welcome to another live show with Affirmations for Black Men. I would like to thank my guests, Xavier, Leo, and Curtis, for coming on today. I know it's Memorial Day weekend. Everybody wants to get outside and do the cookouts, but we are prioritizing the Black men who are seeking help understanding the child support system and Black fatherhood and trying to answer as many questions as possible. But first and foremost, I would love for my guests to, starting with Xavier, to introduce themselves, and we'll go in a circle as Xavier, Leo, and then Curtis. And then from there, I'll jump into the questions.
Thank you, Nicole. Hello, everyone. My name is Xavier Buford. I am a 32-year employee of the Philadelphia Department of Prisons. I'm currently the first deputy commissioner of prisons, and that has been my career for the last 32 years. I want to thank Nicole for inviting me on to this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And Leo?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name's Leo Fields. I'm an attorney in Philadelphia. I've worked for the last 15 years in the district attorney's office in the Family and Child Support Services unit. So, what we do there is, we do paternity, we help with obviously child support, we do registration of foreign court orders. We also do some stuff with custody and PFAs, so or protection from abuse. So we kind of run the full gamut of domestic relations in Philadelphia. And just like Xavier said, I want to thank Nicole for for having us on here and putting this together, especially because we I see a lot of almost like the wars of the sexes, and this is something coming from a place that appears to be trying to bring everybody together, and that's important for me to see in our community. So thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Curtis and Xavier, for being here as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Curtis Jones III. I am a public relations specialist and government liaison for First Judicial District. I've been employed with the courts for about, 25 years now, so I'm a little dated. But in that time, I served at least 19 of those years working for the Honorable Judge Johnson, which are child support cases, custody cases, paternity cases. So I'm honored to be here today to speak to your audience. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you. And just a little background on me, since this is like maybe our second time meeting, I started Affirmations for Black Men about 4 years ago. My dad, when he passed away when I was 11 years old, he actually had a heart attack. And one of the things that was stressing him out financially was child support. He had two different mothers from two different kids from two different mothers. And so he had his child support payments, he had his house payment, and he had his car payment. And he was making, in the early 2000s, I'm 31 now, he was making 100 grand, and he still couldn't afford life. And it was still really stressful with all, and he lived in New York with all the bills that he had. He was making over six figures, and the stress of the money. And then, like, also, obviously, he wanted to take care of his kids, but he didn't feel like he could afford it, literally killed him. And so I'm coming from a woman's perspective, but I'm also coming from the perspective of someone whose dad passed away due to a lot of the financial stress, because stress is a killer. So I wanted to ask you guys, because I also am a landlord. One of the things that my dad left me on my birthday weekend when he passed was a Monopoly set. So that's how I got into real estate, and I freed myself financially by getting into real estate. And I was able to kind of like do the inner work and go to therapy and have more time to myself than normal to self reflect. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys, because one of my tenants is going through this right now, what, like, for the Black man who said, I can't afford child support, but I'm facing jail time, I'm facing not being able to travel and all of these different things, and I literally don't have the money. And this is what I keep hearing from men. So can you give us an idea of like the timeline from when you can't afford to pay child support and what you should do, and then what happens and the repercussions of that?
Okay, I mean, I'll start off because this is, obviously something that's in my wheelhouse, but and I always tell people, and this is not easy to hear, it is not easy to do, but first and foremost, try to work it out with the mother if you can. Maybe that ship has sailed, maybe it hasn't, I don't know. But if you know that she's looking for something in particular, maybe she wants you to see the children more, maybe she just wants you to help out with childcare. Maybe there's something that you can do to resolve that situation that doesn't involve you having to pay a ton of money through the courts. So if you can work it out with her, I mean, she has the power at any moment to drop your case, give you a break, lower it, reduce the overall back child support you owe. So that's number one. And you'd be surprised how many people can work those sort of arrangements out. A lot of them can't, but that's you at least want to start there. If that ship has sailed, then it is very important to avail yourself of the court process if you're unable to pay. And what I mean by that is go down to court and let them know what your financial situation is. If it has changed, let them know that you lost your job. Let them know that maybe you are disabled at this point, whatever it may be. Your hours are cut, and file the appropriate petitions to get it either lowered, suspended, or temporarily terminated. So it's extremely important that you let the court know what's going on with you. If I'm assuming this is a question based on somebody who's already been ordered to pay support. So if that's the case, yeah, you're gonna have to make sure you file the appropriate things, because if you don't, and that number starts to rack up, if those payments begin to be missed on a monthly basis, yeah, you're facing driver's license suspension, you're facing passport suspension, you're facing potential incarceration. So it's very important that number one, try to work it out. Number two, if that's something that's not possible, go down to the court and let them know what your situation is and file what you need to file to get yourself in a situation where you can potentially get it lowered or reduced or suspended.
Okay. I
If I
feel
could
like,
piggyback off what you're saying,
yeah, I was
you
feeling
covered a
like have
lot
like
of
a
the
hard time
bases.
going to court, so I just wanted to point that out. But go ahead, Cordis. I'm sorry.
Mhm. Yeah, just from the simplest things too. Let's think about, what breaks down between a mother and a father. It's normally communication first, right? And in non-communicating, a lot of times you're not going to be aware of what your rights are if you don't ask questions, right? And so if you and the mother are not talking, and you realize that you have a court order or you've been ordered to pay a child support, first of all, you you're able to go into court. You have the right to go into court and get a order established. You bring in your financials. You go before a hearing officer. They get to determine what that would look like. And well, like with most things, right? It's akin to having a bill like a Pico or gas. Now, obviously, you know, if you get behind your go your gas bill, you're going to ask, hey, I don't want my lights or my gas to get turned off. Hey, can I work out something, right? You'll call whatever number that they have. It's similar in child support. There are numbers where most of those orders, there's units that you can go into and ask questions. That is, I think, your strongest tool in your tool belt. You got to ask questions. You can't be afraid of asking questions because that leads to avoidance behavior. And what happens with a lot of young men that I see come through those courtrooms is that they'll say they didn't know,
Mm,
but you got to ask the question.
mm.
And just to, I guess, close it out, and both what Leo is saying on the front end and Curtis is saying in the middle, and by the time you make it to incarceration, right? You have to have had tried everything, right? That's what a lot of our brothers do not do, and that's they don't bring the financials. They don't say, "Hey, listen, I've reached out, I've tried to do this," or "Listen, the order is just too much for what I'm making right now. I may even be doing two jobs right now, and the order still may be too high, Your Honor. But I'm doing everything I can." And they don't like to express, and that is a problem for us. We don't like to actually tell what is really going on with us, right? Bring the financials, and then even if you didn't have a job, but you went out marching trying to get jobs, you bring that documentation. Like, hey, I applied here, 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 here. I'm trying everything I can. I'm trying to do everything I can not to get incarcerated. And they have to do that. That's where it all comes in. So I believe that brings that question full circle.
Well, I also want to recognize that we do have people in the chat. If you guys look in the public chat on your right, we have Sean. He said, "Been there, done that. I was in debt for thousands in child support, and then it taught me how to budget." So, to his budget point, I think that they're in our community. Budgeting and financials and like realizing where you should spend your money, I think that's like difficult, right? And so I think that's also where the system could fall short, is that we're not really educating people in our school systems enough on how to manage their money. And then when they get to a point where they have to, it's either, like either you know how to manage it or you don't, could result in prison time. I feel like that's a little unfair. So my next follow-up question is, I just want to be blunt here. Where do you guys think the system could improve, and where do you think it's failing right now?
Well,
So
I, oh, go ahead,
go
Kurt.
ahead, Xavier. Oh, all right. I thought it was
That was
Xavier.
Leo. Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Uh,
I got
I-
you. My perspective, I had a unique perspective as a judicial aide, Honorable Joel Johnson. I wasn't the prosecutor, there wasn't the defense attorney. I worked for the judge, but commonly I was able to see people out in the hallways. You gotta understand, when the judge, gets on that bench, he doesn't leave that bench until his cases are over. The prosecutor comes in and they have a particular mindset, and they're dealing with the obligee who they're trying to collect child support for. But for me, from my standpoint, I always look at these guys coming in and figure that, look, the best stuff up for success, right, is being able to constantly communicate, constantly get information, constantly where you are in this whole child support process. Because when you go in that courtroom, the judge is looking at something in particular, the prosecutor is looking at something in particular, and sometimes you being able to kind of communicate where you are, in that, ability to pay might get lost. And a lot of times you get heated emotions when you go in there, right? People can't sometimes see clearly because they're either mad at the child's mother or the circumstances behind them maybe not seeing their child, so on and so forth.
Right, right. And Leo, did you have something to add?
yeah. So in terms of where it fails and where it can be improved upon, I go back to what I said initially to the first question, which is, trying to work it out with the other parent. And the major failing, in my opinion, on the system is it's adversarial. So it's pitting two people against each other, a mother and a father against each other. So that's to me, that's a foolish way to engage this sort of issue. It really needs to be more collaborative. It really needs to be the system uh, geared toward reunifying families, if at all possible. Um, I don't see too much mediation going on in the child support space. I don't see too much resolution going on there. I just see two people who come in on opposite sides, one person trying to win and the other person trying to stop the other person from winning. So that creates a lot of the division. And at the end of the day, it's not good for the children. I mean, that's really what my focus is generally on, is on the best interest of the children. And the way the system is set up, it doesn't appear to me, at least, that the child is at the focus. So uh, that's one of the major failings. How we can improve on that is, maybe some sort of court ordered mediation to start off with, and not just somebody telling you this is what you're going to pay, this is what the number is. Maybe somebody who's neutral, who's trained in mediation, to come in and say, well, where do we have an issue and where can we resolve this without having a court ordered payment one person has to make to the other. Because I always say, and this is something that I'm going to little pivot a little bit toward, some of the issues I see in our community specifically, is that when we have a family issue, we are very quick to run down to the court on a family issue. And me personally, I don't want any strangers or the government or anybody involved in a family issue that I have. So um, if we could have something where, and maybe this isn't the system, maybe this is something before you get into the system, where you can go and talk to somebody about what your problem is, your family issue. Maybe it's your pastor, maybe it's your community leader, maybe it's somebody in your family, where you can come to them and mitigate this issue and come to a resolution without having to go into court with the government making a decision on a family issue. I emphasize that a lot because this is what we're talking about. It's a mother, a father, and a child or children. At the heart of all this is a family issue. And, for me, I want to avoid at all costs getting strangers, especially the government, involved in a family issue.
Right. Thank you so much for your
Yeah.
perspective. I don't know if Xavier, if you had a point to add
Well,
to it.
and the only point I could add is that, yeah, the system, yes, is still very flawed, but there has been some changes. I have seen the changes. Myself and Curtis was talking about this. We remember in the early 2000s when guys were just getting incarcerated based off of child support alone. It was ridiculous. Guys that were, they were losing. They had jobs and losing their jobs because they, started getting incarcerated. The system has since changed since then. I do not see that anymore because I guess of the programs that has been put in place or the processes that have been put in place that guys are not just getting incarcerated for child support anymore, not like it was. So, yes, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but there has been some changes because it seems to me back then that was the easiest thing to do was to incarcerate uh, those guys.
Wow, thank you so much
Yeah,
for
you're
that
right, Xavier.
perspective.
You're right. So I just wanted to add one thing, and I said, the equity, right, is really a thing that the courts are now starting to understand that is necessary within that system. And so, what does equity look like? This conversation, right? You have people who are connected to the criminal justice system taking the time to kind of really give public service announcement of sorts to your audience and really looking at other ways that we can be impactful in this conversation. Because at the end of the day, right, these people from our community that end up having to go to jail. And we did see a reduction in incarceration, but that was, I think, coupled with the fact that that was the movement right around near COVID. It was trying to reduce the prison population. There was a lot of emphasis on that, so judges understood that they wanted to find alternate sentencing.
Wow. And I feel so blessed to be able to have different people who are also black men in different parts of the system. And I feel like these conversations don't happen as much, or we can all come together with different experiences and different positions and like have this conversation for black men specifically and black fathers specifically. So I want to take this opportunity and ask each one of you guys individually, what are some of the biggest issues in your fields that you're seeing black fathers face right now?
Well, for me, in the work that I do, I see a a lack of information being given to people who are entering this system, and I start back at paternity. You know, the current law on paternity is, and anybody that's had a child probably knows this. When you're at the hospital and the child's born, they come in with a document, and they say, you sign this document saying that you acknowledge that you're the father. Well, first of all, you're signing a legal document that forces you to have certain obligations toward the child that you're saying is you believe is yours. I'm not saying don't sign the document. I'm saying that the information about what the document entails and what it forces you to do really needs to be understood before signing the document. And I know it's that whole process is problematic to me because I mean you're there with the mother of your child. Her family's probably there. Your family's there. are you really even in a position to say, hold on, I don't really want to sign that document right now? Probably not. It's a high pressure situation. And so the lack of information surrounding even that step
Mm.
is a problem for me, because it's once you sign that document, it's hard to get your name off. I mean, you got to go to the court, you maybe have to do the testing, you maybe have to convince a judge to give you the test. So the information is something that I see as a big problem. But even moving on to if you do end up getting on the child support, or you got a custody issue, you know, defining these terms. What is custody mean? What is a custody order? What is a child support order? How long do you think you're gonna have to be paying this? How does it calculate it? And are you gonna even be able to afford it based off of what you earn? And I think a lot of people underestimate how expensive these child support orders are until they get into it. So the information surrounding how much it's going to be of a hit on you financially. And I look at people's pay stubs all the time, and in Philadelphia, people are not making a lot of money. And so when you take 50%, sometimes it's how much it is, 50% off of a $25 an hour job. That that's a crazy number. When you look at what they end up getting take home pay, and trying to live off that and survive. So having the information from the start that this is what it's going to look like if you end up on in the system on child support, I think that's a major something that's been lacking, and we really need to impress upon the public and men in our community what that's going to be like if the situation breaks down and you end up in the court system.
Well, thank you so much, Leo, because we all did a meeting. You guys don't know this, but we actually met in person, in the last meeting, and not a lot of brothers showed up, and for the information. And that was an information session where people could have talked to you guys directly and received that information. I think there's a lot of fear behind this topic. And so, Curtis, I wanted to ask you next, what do you think is within your field, what do you think is the biggest issue that Black fathers are facing that you're seeing?
So as it relates to my position, so I sit at a interesting intersection between the courts and public policy. And oftentimes, I interact with legislators who look to be able to deal with some social issue that their constituency is dealing with, particularly when it comes to the courts. And oftentimes, whether it's criminal in nature in the sense of like over incarceration, whether it's child support, everybody agrees that economics is the biggest issue from being able to help young Black men. And so when we see people not paying child support orders and going into contempt and going to these courtrooms before these judges, is oftentimes for economics. And so I think there's conversations that need to be had in regards to how do we set ourselves up financially to be fiscally responsible, to understand how we take a order that might be 50% of our pay and manage our lifestyle and things of that nature. Because oftentimes I think that, some of these guys who end up, going to jail on child support is because the order snowballed, right? It might have started off at a certain amount, you lost your job, and then now, you get before this judge and you owe several $1,000s and you're scratching your head like, how could this happen? And oftentimes, young Black men I see are not, able to be in stable situations. They're either living pillar to post, they're changing their address, they have PO boxes, they're not getting mail. So, and that has a lot to do with, the economic reality that they're not making enough, or, they're not understanding how to fiscally be responsible. That's
Wow.
a hard truth, but that's something that we have to address.
Education and economics. And then I have Sean in the chat who said, my whole check was taken. I didn't even know what garnished wages meant until that happened. He didn't even know what it meant until the money came out his account. So that's just to Leo's point again, like the education factor, that it's just not happening in our school systems. I don't know if there's like classes or anything that's happening within government, within even the city of Philadelphia, because that's where we're all located, the city of brotherly love, or pamphlets, or like how are we organizing to make sure that our men are aware of these things, right? So I don't.
No, that's a great assessment on it, and that's something that we need to take back. We need to take back to the people we're connected to, and help kind of create conversations by creating programs. So whether through the Office of Black Male Engagement, whether it's through the courts, and judges do community outreach. So these are the conversations and things that we need to hear so that we can make sure that there's equity.
Yeah, absolutely. And Xavier, when black men are reaching maybe, and this is like, you're at a really tough point in your life, right? So like what do you see a commonality of black fathers specifically of like the thing that they're struggling with the most, that the reason why they're there with you?
Yeah, and Leo and Curtis, I mean, both of your points hit it right on the head. But it also starts with accountability, right? The person themselves have to take accountability that you have now fathered this child, right? And you can't be a part-time father. You gotta be in there and not treat this child like a token, even if you and the mother are not getting along and it's this push pull type of atmosphere that's going on. The child is the one that's in the middle of this, and the child is the one that is going to suffer and be hurt by it because all they see is mommy and daddy can't be in the same room with each other, or they just can't get along with each other. So we as black and brown men have to start taking accountability, and sometimes that goes a long way where you might not end up in the status of incarceration or whatever, because you go to that courtroom and you say, listen, your honor, I pick my child up every week, I pick them up from school, or I do this, I do that. I may not have the funds, right, because I'm always going to be chasing funds, but I make sure I put in the time.
Hmm.
So to me, that's a part of accountability that we need to get better with. And that's what I see a lot that's missing.
Man, well, why do you think that we having a problem with accountability? Where does that stem from?
Some of it is actual uh, where you grew up at, how you grew up, right? And what you see and what you've been raised around.
Mm.
And that just begets, right? But some of it is you just knowing in yourself, you know what? I gotta fix me. Whatever my past was, or whatever I was doing, or whatever I saw, does not need to be who I am, right? I now have a child. I'm going to at least make sure this child knows who I am. I'm going to make sure that this child sees me, needs me, and I'm there when they need me. Uh, and that's something I always used to tell people. Just because you may have grown up in a bad environment, or a bad living area, that does not define you, right? You don't have to do that just because you were in that was your surrounding. That doesn't define you. What defines you is how you change and make you and people around you better. That's what defines you.
Amazing. Well, I want to, we got to wrap this up because we're almost at our 30-minute mark, but this is Affirmations for Black Men. And so I want to end it with everybody, starting with Curtis, giving the Black men who are watching and the Black men on my page. We had around like 6 people on the live today. Thank you guys so much for coming. Last live, we had about 2 people. I'm starting it back up, and I'm building the live community because I definitely would get like thousands of views with the reels and the shorts, but there's just something about longer conversations and longer connection and talking to people in real time that I want to invest in. So thank you, Black men, for showing up and showing out. And starting with you, Curtis, what is an affirmation you can give to our brothers who are lacking the education, having trouble with the accountability, and the economics?
Sure. First thing, forgive yourself. Okay. Looking in the mirror sometimes is hard to do, right? But once you do it, a lot of great things can happen, and if you could start there with forgiving yourself, and no mistake, and a child's not a mistake, but no mistake in the sense of, students are not paying child support, is something that is simple. So forgive yourself.
Mm, beautiful. And Leo, if you could answer the affirmation question as well, we really appreciate the time that you took out today. Thank you so much.
Oh, of course, yeah. What I would say to the black men listening, as to affirm them, is take pride in being a man. You know, and providing for your children. To take pride in that, whatever that may mean for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be financial, but whatever it is that you're doing to provide for your children and your family, take pride in that as a man, because, in my opinion, there's nothing more masculine than providing for your family.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. John says, I'm looking forward to it. So we have forgive yourself and take pride in providing for your family. And Xavier, if you want to close us out.
Yeah, the first thing, thank you, Nicole, for this topic. I mean, this is a great topic, but listen, every day we wake up, that is God giving us another chance to get it right. Right? Every day is a day for us to just get it right. And if we attack every day that way, right? I woke up today, thank you, Lord. Uh, but I'm going to try to get it right today. And if you don't get it right today, then tomorrow you try again. And you just keep trying. And as long as you keep trying, you'll be okay. And that's what I think is very important.
Keep trying. Okay, that's amazing. Thank you guys. And thank you guys for watching. You could watch us back on Facebook and YouTube. Brothers, keep trying. And we appreciate you and we love you. And we will see you next Friday at 4 p.m. We'll be talking to the Black Male Engagement Office of 3 separate cities at once. That is our next episode. So make sure to subscribe, to follow, to like, to comment, and let us know what you want to hear next. All right. Bye.